Hi, we're here for another podcast. I'm Adam, the creator of Sumo,
Hello, I'm Jenny, a student of Sumo.
and we're going to show you how to use Sigma to do one of the exercises in my ontology book. It's from chapter 4, page 155, and it's exercise 7.1 on defining the term called following. We're just going to do the first part of the exercise where we look for terms in Sumo that are relevant to this exercise. And we'll do a separate podcast on actually writing the axioms.
Okay, that's fine.
So how do you want to get started, Jenny?
Well, we have to think about what is following.
Okay.
I say, well, when I look it up in the dictionary, you can define following in different sense. Following can be an adverb, it could be a verb, and it could be some other things. So, what does following mean in this exercise specifically?
Yeah, I was intending it to be a verb, so why don't we just go with that?
Well, if, if it's a verb, then we're talking about processes in the sumo term, isn't it?
Okay, so let's start looking at processes. So let's click on Browse from Ontology Portal. And remember, if you saw our first podcast on Sigma, we're going to be operating in the KB term field here. So we're going to type process with a capital P because it's not a relation. Okay, so here we go. We get the definitions for a process. Okay, so following is a process. Let's think about a little bit about what kind of a process it is.
Let's look at some of the subprocesses of process, and let me have a look and think. So following, it involves some kind of movement, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's some kind of motion.
Okay, let's take a look at that.
Wow.
Okay, so while that's loaded, the pictures are nice, but we don't really care about them right now. So what's kind of motion? So can we say something more specific about it than just that it's motion?
So motion, well, in following, you have an origin and then you have a destination. So it's like traveling from one place to another. In sumo, do you have some kind of process that would relate or translate into this kind of motion?
Yeah, in fact we do, and it's called translocation. Let's take a look at that. So translocation, object moves from one place to another.
But I just saw a trip and translocation. What's the difference between the two?
Trip. Let's look at a trip. Motion along a particular transit way.
Right.
Okay, so this, if you're following somebody, you needn't be along a particular transit way, right? We could be following somebody through a forest.
Right.
Right? There's no defined path already created. You're making your own path going cross country.
So I don't need to follow someone exactly by walking on top of somebody's footstep or following the same path.
Yeah, and not only that, but with respect to trip, neither party needs to be following an established path. That's
Okay.
the key distinction. Trip is following an established path. Again, looking here, right, along a transit route or transit way, and we don't have
Right.
that. Although I would note that trip is pretty lightly defined here. This looks like sort of a stub that somebody created at some point, and it really does need a bit more definition. So great exercise for somebody out there to help us take the stuff that's in the comment and turn it into a formal axiom. But that's extra credit at this point.
Right.
So let's go back to looking at translocation.
Okay.
All right, so let's see, can we get anything more specific than translocation? I mean, it looks to me like, it's not something specific like the Muslim Hajj.
No.
It's not necessarily landing on water, or landing an airplane, decelerating,
No.
and then taking off, transfer. Not necessarily a trespassing. So it looks
No.
like we can't get too much more specific than at the moment to say it's a new kind of translocation.
Right. So we're happy with it's a process and it's some kind of motion which we decided it's translocation.
Translocation. What else can we say about it?
Something quite obvious is there's a motive. So the one where we should have two person 1 following person 2.
Ah, okay. So we're maybe going to exclude the case for like one billiard ball following another. So a case where we have inanimate objects just happening to pass along the same path.
No, you
Yeah.
do have to have an intention, don't you?
Okay, so if we've got to have an intention, then we can also say that process is
An intentional
an
process.
intentional process. You guessed it. Okay, and this is a good point because in SUMO we have multiple inheritance. Be careful with multiple inheritance. Be sure it's necessary, but in this case, it appears that we have both an intentional process and a translocation in the case of following. So we want to be able to say both things.
Okay, may I just dive in to look at intentional process?
Yeah.
Find out more about it.
Okay, so a intentional process requires a cognitive agent. Okay, intentional process requires a cognitive agent because agent, let's take a look. Yeah, has purpose. You have to be awake while you're doing it. That all makes sense. Yeah, here we have the axiom that it must be specifically a cognitive agent.
Now I have a question. If I have a robot following something, it's robot a cognitive agent?
Yeah, let's take a look at cognitive agent. An agent that has the ability to reason, deliberate, make plans. Experience emotions. That could be a problem then for, let's see if our axioms actually say that or if the comment is a little shallow. Ability of reasoning. Intentional. Yeah, I don't see anything. We might want to change that comment a little bit. I don't know why emotions are absolutely necessary.
What about a dog following another dog?
Yeah, there's nothing that says necessarily we can't have a dog as a cognitive. Well, let's see. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Can a dog make plans? That sounds like what we really want is a sentient agent. Okay, agent capable of perception, and following really just requires perception. So domestic animal is a sentient agent, but may or may not be a cognitive agent. So certainly lots of very simple animals can do following behaviors, can't they?
Yes, but then now we are led to decide whether following is intentional or not intentional.
Yeah, there may be an open question there. So,
Right.
all right, so for now, let's leave it as intentional process, but this is something we might have to return to deliberate on.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, and what else? Okay, so now we've given some basic class, subclass information. What else are we going to want to say?
We want to talk about, well, they don't need to start at the same point or finish at the same locations, but during this process of following, the follower wants to know the location, or I would say whereabout, of the person that being followed.
Ah, okay, so there has to be some perception involved. Being aware, being knowing.
Right.
Okay, so maybe we need to look at knows. Okay, so here we have again a cognitive agent knowing a formula. Now this is getting a little more difficult for some folks because now we're into the realm of higher order logic. An argument is a formula. Alright, so we're going to need to talk about knowing the location. Alright, so this is going to go fast. I think we can just sketch here what's necessary, and in our later podcast we'll write out what's required. So kind of keep some of these things in mind. There'll be a few loose ends, and we'll go over later in our future podcast the details. But certainly we're going to need to have predicate located.
Right.
Okay, so that one object is located in another, one thing is located in another thing or place. Right, so in this case, it's going to be the entity being followed is going to be located at a particular place. What we want is to wrap this in knows. We want our agent, our follower, to know that his followee is located at a particular location. And we get to go one step farther, not only that he knows that he's located, but we want him to desire to know that he's located. That's the whole purpose of the following. I'm following someone because I want to know where they're located. Right? So desire says
You have an agent?
you have an agent and a cognitive agent knowing a formula. That formula is that I know that my target is located at some position.
Okay.
Right, so now we've got a good sketch. We've got, I think, all the terms we're actually going to need, and we'll leave it to a future podcast for how to put it together.
I think we still have one point missing.
Okay, what's left?
Well, what about leading? It could be just agent 1 leading agent 2.
Ah, good point. Yes, who's leading who? So we've got to say that one person's motion causes the motion of another. Like my target moves, therefore I move, so I can keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way we specify that is causes in SUMO.
It causes a relation?
Causes is a relation. It's a relation between two processes.
Right.
In this case, that the motion, the translocation of my target causes my translocation, so I stay within sight of him.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Good?
Yep.
Anything else I've missed?
Not that I know for the time being.
Okay, great. Then we'll leave it here, and we'll revisit this in more detail in a future podcast. Thanks very much.
Thank you.